Hello everyone, welcome. Okay, for the whole thing. Hi guys. Oh, I didn't realize it's on sale. That's good to know. So this is why it's good to have it live, because then we can all like chip in information. Okay. I mean, like I'm super late, so there's already people here. Hi guys. I know I always say 7, but then I always end up starting at like 10 past or 15 past. I honestly, I swear, I try my best to get there at 7, but it's just in my nature, unfortunately. I'm one of those annoying people. But okay, I think I'm just gonna start, to be honest, because I am late, so everyone who wanted to be here is probably already here. So but okay, also I'm gonna do it the same format. However, after every section, I may have like a quick brief look at like the chat to see if anyone has questions between each part, because I think it was Fancy that suggested it, since a lot of people, I guess, at the end are kind of like, okay, I can't remember what the question was. So, but anyway, now that you know that, let me start my review on Even If Tempest. So before I start, thank you very much to Tifa, Yesterday, and Juicy for the monetary support. I really appreciate it. It will be going towards improving my channel as well as getting Otome games to review. So thank you very much. Also, the question of the day is, so that you guys can discuss it or, answer it later on if you're watching the VOD. Do you prefer happy Otome games or angsty ones? Also, before I start, and you have heard this like a billion times already, I'm sure, note that although I would not consider any of what I include in this video spoilers, and whether what you consider spoilers and what I consider spoilers may not quite align. So if you're even a little bit sensitive and you don't even want to know what's on the official website, then I would swiftly move on. But anyway, let me start. So first up, I'll talk about the plot. Now note that this game is like quite dark, and I mean, I didn't expect it to be like this dark. So if you are sensitive to certain triggers, or you're triggered really easily by certain things, then I may not even watch this review. I may just like go on to the next video, just because I will be talking about it, and actually I'm going to be using terminology that may be triggering. I don't know. I'm just trying to be as safe as possible. But okay, let me start talking about the plot. So basically, it's about this main character, Anastasia, who at the beginning it's a little bit of a Cinderella situation where she's being abused by her stepmother in the attic. She's not allowed to she has zero freedom. She's just sitting there. She sleeps there, eats there. She's not allowed to leave the attic, so she's just it's a really like nasty situation. And then finally, she gets to leave for a variety of reasons. I'm not going to go into too much detail because it's more fun to obviously play the prologue yourself. But for a variety of reasons, she gets to leave and live a slightly better life, except, of course, she then is suspected of being a witch and becomes burnt on the stake. I know. It already is a little bit depressing. Um, but when she dies, and I don't know if this is the positive thing, I guess it was at the end of the day, but she gains the ability to rewind time, which is great. But the way she does it is by dying. So she'll go, okay, I'm gonna die so that I can rewind time. By the end of it, she's so casual about it, it's actually ridiculous. You're like, oh my gosh, this is not a good mentality. But yes, so naturally this game is about rewinding time, doing things again, rewinding time, doing things again, and so on and so forth. Now when she gains the ability to rewind time, these witch trials begin, which happen every however many years. It's a very supernatural event. What happens is the witch basically bewitches a particular person, like one of the many people living in this country. And what happens is, because they're bewitched, they are able to just kill, like murder whoever they want. So what happens is they tend to murder one particular person or a whole bunch of people in a myriad of ways. And that's the reason why the title is this Otome game murder documentary, because some of the murders I honestly was like, this is like those murder shows where they're like, oh, this murderer brutally killed these people in X. It honestly, some of the murders, I was like, this, wow. So, anyway, person is chosen. They commit a murder. Next morning, I'm bearing in mind when this happens, everyone's asleep, so no one knows. There's no like alibis or whatever because everyone's asleep. When they wake up, 5 people wake up with this massive chain around their neck, and it's to signify that they're one of the suspected people, and one of those 5 is of course the murderer. And then they is this like ceremonial thing where a witch trial is held, where those 5 people in the center basically explain and debate why they are innocent or like not suspicious, basically, or saying so and so suspicious, and like they basically debate it out. By the end of it, 100 random people who have been made to sit there and watch this will then vote on who they think the witch is, and they keep on doing that until they get rid of the witch. It's a bit like kind of Danganronpa, for example, where they're all chatting and trying to say who's suspicious or who's not, or Raging Loop is another visual novel I've recently been playing. That's all about finding the werewolf. It's a bit like that. You're constantly pointing fingers. But another thing that I felt like it was a little bit kind of Game of Thrones-esque in that there was a lot of like, so they're 3 brothers who one of them want to be like will become king. The eldest and the youngest, Lucien, are constantly like having a bit of a bickering, or it almost feels like a rivalry on who can be the next king. So there was a bit of a, at least for me, a bit of a Game of Thrones feel in that sense, because yeah, it did come into play a bit. But yeah, so that's kind of like the plot of Even If Tempest. It's quite gritty and dark. Tyril Lister. Oh, Tyril was my favorite character. Yes, Among Us is another one that it's quite similar to. Anyway, moving on. So, who made this game? First up, the scenario writer is Ayane Ushio, who also wrote Norn 9. I think many of you know Norn 9. I haven't actually played it myself, but it's a game that's was released on the Vita in English like years and years ago, and is now planned for release on Switch, which I think everyone was happy about. I can't remember when. I don't know if the dates are confirmed. It's probably on my Discord server somewhere, but yeah, so that's quite exciting. Now, the artist, I did not know who the hell this is. I'm really sorry. That makes me sound so rude, but it's by Norita, who drew the characters from Beast Darling, Switch Otome game. I haven't played it, and I hadn't even heard of it until I basically made this slide. So that's the artist, and yeah, that's the thing, Fancy. I was kind of surprised too. I didn't realize. And so yeah, one thing that I think surprised everyone also was the fact that it was made by Voltage. Voltage, as a lot of you probably know, is a company that primarily makes sort of mobile otome games, and they're relatively low budget. Not that there's anything wrong with that. I really like Voltage games because they're nice and quick and easy reads, where I don't really have to think too much, and it's a nice entry point for those who haven't played otome games before. However, because they're known for being relatively low budget and on mobile, it was kind of surprising that they made a Switch only game, which had like a good scenario writer, amazing voice actors, that sort of thing. So it was exciting in that sense as well when it was first announced. Now, system. It's, I'd say, shorter than your average Automate game. It's from 30 to 45 hours. It depends on whether you use a walkthrough or whether you're ambitious like me and don't use a walkthrough. Yeah, if you use a walkthrough, I think you could get through it in 30 to 35 hours, I think. Whereas if you want to take your time, it will probably take you about 45 hours. There is no skip to next function, which is really frustrating, but the skip is really quick, so it didn't bother me too much. And there is, oh thank goodness, a love catch. So the right choice is a red rose, the wrong choice is a black rose. And obviously depending on that you go down whatever route. There isn't really a secret route per se. Once you finished all of the routes, you do get like an extra little route, kind of, but it's not really a route. It's just more like, it feels more like bonus content, if you know what I mean. And this didn't feel like your average visual novel in that there was this witch hunt system, which I'll go into a little bit more detail. It felt like gameplay. So yeah, that was fun. It didn't feel like just reading. Yeah, I'm hoping they make more high quality games too, because I really enjoyed this one. No, definitely. So the witch trial thing was, you would have the story part obviously, and then it would go on to this investigation part where you would have like I can't remember how many hours you had, but you'd, let's say you have 12 hours, and then each sort of investigation, there'd be like 3 or 4 that you can pick out of, would take like 3 hours or 2 hours or whatever. And then so you would use that time to investigate whatever you feel will be useful later on when you do the trial. Remember to save a lot because you'll realize, so if you know, use a walkthrough, that's fine, but if you're like me and you get ambitious, then you want to save a lot, because sometimes who you investigated would actually be quite key, and if you haven't investigated them, you can't clear that. So bear that in mind. But yeah, what happens is you pick them and then you ask them questions and they tell you stuff, and later on you can use that as evidence, essentially. Then after that is the debate part. This is where you and the 4 others have to debate, basically, about who's the most suspicious and why you're not suspicious. And this is kind of like the evidence you would get from the investigation part. So in this case, it'd be like missing letter, article on you, article on Orla, like things like that, where you would then pick things like rebuke, advocate, sympathize. Like there'll be actions you can pick, which is under 10 seconds, which sounds scary, but I just click the home button and then think about it. And then I know it's cheating, but it worked because I panic easy. But you would pick one of those and then you would use evidence to kind of back up your point. And I think it was quite a nice system. It felt like a little bit something different, you know? Does this game actually feel like a higher production than Stand Votable? It did, in that like the art was more detailed. I felt like the backgrounds were more detailed. You of course had voice acting. It definitely was higher production than your usual Voltage, where like the love interests look relatively similar. The main character is typically brown hair. Like that's the thing. In that sense, it was more unique. And of course, the voice acting added a lot more. So I would definitely say it's higher production for sure. Okay, so that's kind of the debate. And if you make a mistake, you die. So it's quite high stake. Now the main character is the amazing Anastasia, which I adore this main character. You'll get like you'll get scenes where you'll see her dressed like a guy and the girls like fangirling over her, and I don't blame them because she looks so cool, and she literally goes from damsel in distress when she's in the attic being abused by her mother to this like prince-like courageous figure after she's died and relived her life and all of this. And she's extremely caring. She does have to make decisions throughout this game that makes her feel guilty, and probably you guilty as well as a player, because there'll be like option A and B, and both of them will require you either sacrificing one person or another. And it's actually quite, I think it hit me harder than I expected, because there would be characters that you really like and you would have to like basically shove them under the bus to survive or whatever, and you do feel really guilty, and so does she. So you're kind of on the same wavelength. But I thought all in all she was pretty cool main character, and I think a lot of people in the West would appreciate her. Especially because I do hear a lot of, oh, I don't really like this main character because she's so stereotypical, like she's always being protected, la la la, that sort of thing. So, you know. Now, other info, I don't even know why I added this. I guess I felt like it was important after I wrote everything else, basically. But it is really linear in the way you do it, because so normally, of course, Otome games, you have like 5 routes and then you can go for whatever one, unless maybe one's locked. In this, you either pick Crius or Tyril, and then you have to play Zenn after those two, and then you have to play Lucien after those two, and then you have to play the little bonus content after Lucien. Like, that order is set. So the only real choice you're given is Crius or Tyril. I personally felt like Crius made more sense and then Tyril, but obviously, ultimately, I don't think it really matters who you go for first. I'll, of course, go into a bit more detail on how I felt about each of the characters, and maybe perhaps that will help you decide who you want to go for first. As I said earlier, make sure you save often, because, you know, the gameplay part, you say one thing wrong and all of a sudden, dear God, you're dead. So it's quite important. One thing I must say is that the gameplay sometimes, it's not that it doesn't feel right, it's more that sometimes it feels like it's making you feel like your decisions make a difference when you're basically being guided down to make certain decisions anyway. So that was something that I felt a little bit frustrated, and also why I felt like a walkthrough fit better after like a couple of rounds, because I don't know, I guess because of course there has to be a certain way that trial ends. The game wants you to go down that. So in order to kind of sway you into going down that sort of solution, if you make a certain choice, it feels like that choice is legit, but it kind of either kills you off, or, you know, it didn't. Sometimes it felt like, yeah, the game made you feel like the game, like, what your decisions mattered, when ultimately perhaps it didn't, at least in those investigation phases. That's how sometimes I felt, but I don't know, that could just be how I felt, and others may not feel that way. Hey, Cassie. But yeah, Anastasia, yeah, such a good heroine. I really liked her. Now, the best part, talking about the characters. So first up is Crius Castlerock. He is voiced by Furukawa Makoto, who also voiced Alan from Cupid Parasite, which I am not gonna lie, I was kind of surprised. As you can tell, I go in playing these games without actually knowing who voices what. And then I'm surprised when I make these and I'm like, oh, I didn't realize. But yeah, Crius is like the guy that's good at everything. You can't fault him in any way. And he is very much like the older senpai type figure. And I don't know, like, okay, I thought he was cool, but he was too good at everything. It felt almost like there was nothing to fix. Not that a love interest has to have something to fix, but I prefer the broken love interest. That makes sense. But yes, so I felt like he was too perfect. Also, I felt like his route was very much all about, I think it felt like I was exploring Anastasia more than Crius, really. The pacing felt like it would have been nice if the game was like 50 or 55 hours as opposed to the short like 30 to 40 type hours, because the routes did feel kind of almost like if there was another hour's worth of gameplay in that route, then it would have been better. Crius, I was a bit sad with how little romance we got, if I'm to be completely honest. I felt like I didn't have enough time to fangirl over him, because it was a lot of Anastasia working hard to be a strong knight, which is fine, but, you know, for me, I would have preferred more romance, definitely. Hi, Reina, Lacey. I love Crius and Tyril. But yeah, so that's Crius. Next up is Tyril I-Lister. He was voiced by Sugiyama Noriaki, who voiced Akito from No 9, and it's really obvious if you watch Naruto. Sasuke from Naruto was voiced also by him, and it's extremely obvious. Like, I swear to you, when I was playing Tyril's route, it always felt like I was listening to Sasuke in a different body. It was really weird. My very first impression of Tyril was that he seems a bit scary. Like, I was a bit like, oh, I don't know how I feel about this guy. He's kind of scary. But when you go this route, oh my gosh, he's so adorable. He's such a tomboy, and in like a really good way. He is one of the cutest tomboys I've come across because the gap is so like wide. Um, yeah, no, I've got nothing but good things to say about Tyril. I also enjoyed his route, because another thing that I really enjoyed about Even If Tempest is that you do the trial from different perspectives, so it doesn't feel repetitive. It feels very different every single time. So for those of you who are worrying, oh, but the trials may feel repetitive because, you know, you're just going back in time and doing things again and again. No, each trial feels extremely different with different people murdering. I say it so casually, but different people committing murders in a different way and having to resolve it from different perspectives. So it's good each time. And Tyril's route I was particularly able to enjoy. It also has a little bit of lore almost, which kind of, yeah, I guess that's why I would play Tyril second, because Crius felt very much like we're trying to kind of focus on Anastasia, and then in Tyril's route you learn a little bit more about the history of that country, that sort of thing. He is Chef's Kiss. The game reminds me so much of dark webtoons. Ooh, he has broken to me. Hi Varga, don't worry, we're talking about the characters now, it's all good. Sasuke for real. So the third one was Zenn Sorfield, who was voiced by Takeuchi Shunsuke, who voices Mitsuhide from what do you call it, Ikemen Sengoku, which I have not played. I really should. Zenn is, yeah, he's a kudere through and through, and he's also a bit like old manish. He's a bit like dad-like. I don't know. I thought I didn't really enjoy his route as much as the others because of the perspective from which we're playing. But I think him as a character, he was all right. I would have liked to see him blush more often though. But I'm hoping that because there is a fan disc coming out sometime in the future, they'll go into a bit more detail in the romance for each of these characters, and then I'll be really happy, because Zen was an example of, yeah, it was very like Cafe Enchante, where by the time they're in love, it's kind of like the end of the game, which is really sad. But no, Zen, funnily enough, was the one that I was most interested in. He was probably my third favorite in the end, just because I guess kuderes, the balance needs to be perfect, right, for me to enjoy kudere. They need to be cool for a good amount of time, but also have the cute part for a good amount of time too, so that I can enjoy that like melting side of them. Last but not least, it's Lucien Neuschburn. He was voiced by Ishikawa Kaito, who all of you will probably know of Dante from Pio Fiore. Oh boy, he is a pretty unique, unique one. Oh, poor guy. He is such a crybaby. Like, don't get me wrong, when he's an adult, he's better at suppressing it, shall we say. But when he's young, he's crying. And, like, when he's older, I think he still cries, but, like, behind closed doors. He is such a sensitive soul. I must say, I thought that would put me off a little bit. But I was pleasantly surprised. I actually really liked Lucien. Though I feel like they did his route dirty in that it felt very much more about the plot more so than Lucien as an individual guy. So it felt like we got Crius route, Tyril route, Zenn route, and then we got the final route in the name of Lucien. That's how it felt. So I would have liked more of him. Again, I'm hoping they do a lot more of the romance in the fan disc that's gonna come out in the future. Nintendo Switch exclusives. Yes, a Gyaru? He's like a pet. Yeah, he's just, I do really like him, but like, bless him. Oh my god. Now, I must say, I'm really mad about this game because of these two. You've got Conrad, who is a dickhead, and I want him as a love interest so bad. I don't think I've ever wanted a side character to be a love interest as bad as Conrad. Like, oh my god, he yeah, so he's got side character syndrome and it's really sad. Same goes for Richard Ruin. Honestly, so much potential for him to be a love interest. I have everything like honestly, Richard Ruin is really cute. I have everything crossed that he's like a maybe a root in the fan disc. I have so much stake on this fan disc, guys. Like the moment it comes out, I'm gonna be buying it and playing it. They were both so good. And let's not forget about Mr. Endy. Bearing in mind, guys, when you play this, when Mr. Endy appears, brace yourself because the noise effects are not pretty. Oh god, whenever he appeared, I was like, no, not Mr. Endy. Now, who would I recommend this game to? I would recommend this game to those who enjoy dark, dodgy, dingy, and angsty otome. It is really dark. I love that. I love dark stuff. I love it. The worse it is, the better for me. So if you're like me, as I said as a fifth point, if you are like me, then you will like this game. I would also recommend it to those who aren't triggered easily. Related to the first point, you think of all the triggers, it'll probably be in there. I actually felt like this was worse than Shuen no Virushu or Verse Evermore in English, I guess. Mainly because the murders that happen in this, as I keep on saying, feel like those you'd see in a murder documentary, so they almost feel like real, like someone, like some psycho would have done that at some point in the existence of Earth. So it felt more real and a bit eerie for me for that reason than Verse Evermore, where it's very fantasy, very sci-fi. Like it's so far from reality. The despair didn't feel as bad, but that could just be me. Other people may disagree completely. I would also recommend it to those who enjoy strong, cool-looking main characters. As I said, Anastasia is so cool. Like, I felt like I'd end up falling in love with her and I'd want her as a love interest. There were times where I wanted her as a love interest because she was so cool. So yeah, definitely that. And finally, I finally recommend it to those who like plot over romance or are happy that it's plot over romance. I'm aware that many of you who would like more romance in these Otome games, and I'm very much like that as well. But if you're okay with the plot being the kind of main thing, with the romance being a bit of a side thing, then I would recommend this game. It's not as much like that as Buster Fellows, where the story, like there's zero romance pretty much in the side A, and you know, romance happens in side B. It's not like that. You do see like sprinkles of romance throughout the game. However, it's very like it's very small, so it's a little bit like Cafe Enchante, I guess. Any recommendations for similar games? So Verse Evermore, I guess, is coming out in autumn. That's like really depressing too. I think Color Malice can get very dark and gritty. I'm trying to think. If we're talking non-Otome games, then you've got things like Danganronpa. Raging Loop is really good. Raging Loop, I've been playing. That is amazing. I'm trying to think. There's so many Otome games now. Before it was like there was 5 and you could like pick one randomly, but now it's like, huh. But yeah, I would say Verse Evermore, Raging Loop, Danganronpa, Color Malice, quite dark. If you're looking for like a horror-esque vibe, then maybe Psychedelica of the Black Butterfly. So that's kind of like the ones I think of. Mr. Any reminds me of Gore Screaming Show. Now, those who I would not recommend it to are those who are looking for something happy, like, you know, Cupid Parasite, Lover Pretend, Very Well Barricade. If that's the kind of thing you like, then maybe don't go for this. If you prefer a modern or contemporary settings, I feel like some people went in thinking that, you know, it would be a bit like a lot of Voltage games where it's like set in the modern day. It's more kind of like relatable to real life maybe, because a lot of Voltage games, you know, are like you go to the same company as them, or you go to the same school as them, or you're living a normal life in a normal world similar to yours, and then something happens. Like it is very, you know, relatable, and I think some people went in expecting it to be a bit more like that maybe, and then got something completely different, and therefore was disappointed. So, you know, if you're looking for something that's typical of Voltage, then this may not actually be for you. I would also not recommend it to those who really want romance over plot. Like if you're looking for something with lots of romance, again, I'd probably, suggest Cupid Parasite, Olympia Soiree. I think Pure Fiore has steaminess, as I'd say. Some routes are more romantic than others, though. I'm trying to think. Those are the ones I think of when someone says romance. And also, I would not recommend it to those who just want to read, because like this does have those like investigation and debate moments where you're suddenly given 10 seconds to answer with one of the questions. Don't get me wrong, like if you're like me and a cheater, you just press the home button and then you think about it for all eternity before going back into the game again. But yeah, if you don't want to think at all and you just want to follow a walkthrough and press like the buttons, then I would also not recommend this, because that investigation debate did feel a bit like gameplay, which is something I really like. So for me, that was a positive thing, but for some, it may not be. How dark is even if Tempest compared to say? So I think Black Wolf Saga, I have not played Black Wolf Saga, but I reckon Black Wolf Saga is worse. Because I have heard that some of the routes you don't even know, like you don't even think this is romance. You think, is this romance? Like, if any of you in the chat have played Black Wolf Saga, then do say how dark it is, because I have not played it. But like, yeah, I've only heard dark things. Now, my general thoughts and rating. So my rating is 8.5 out of 10, so as you can tell, relatively high. It was my favorite Otome game of 2022. I felt like, I know I keep on saying this, but I did feel like watching a murder documentary or a movie where you're like, whoa. Now, there were a few issues, as I mentioned. Sometimes with the investigation debate stuff, I felt like the game was trying to like push me down answering certain things, so it felt like you were supposed to have freedom but you didn't. So those are like the minor issues I had, and maybe like some of the plot pacing was a bit too quick or lacking certain things. So there were a few issues, but they were not big issues for me. Conrad and Witch, why are they not as love interest? Particularly Conrad. Honestly, I have never wanted a side character to be love interest so much as Conrad. Like, he was my ideal Otome trash, but you know what, they didn't give us to him, so hopefully fan this, come on, you can do it. Now, music was really good. The music of Even If Tempest was like spiraling in my mind as in a loop over and over. Like I couldn't get it out of my head in a good way, because it was so beautiful. I loved it so much. Like it always fit the situation. My favorite is probably when the night of the carnival begins. There's like this moon that appears. It's like a little cinematic, and oh, it's so good. I loved it so much. You can probably tell from like how hype I'm getting. But yeah, the only disappointment was there wasn't much evidence gathering. That's true. It would have been nice because you only have like 4 options basically that you would pick and then gather evidence, and sure, each one would give you several evidence pieces, but it was a bit frustrating. It would have been even better if they had added a bit more freedom in that. Oh, it is dark. I can confirm it. And this is my like little thing. Oh gosh, final verdict is very dark. I need to make that white, but whatever. So story, I'd give it a 4 out of 5. It's not perfect because there are pacing issues. But all in all, I was very like intrigued. I was, constantly reading. It's interesting because I read it once, because what happens is you go through it all, but then you have to go through it once again to kind of collect all the endings, and I actually felt like leaving a while before you come back to it to collect the endings made it feel better, because it felt like it's really weird. It felt like there were pacing issues when you read it for the first time, but then you read it for the second time to remind yourself of things and collect the endings, and it felt more like there was substance and it didn't feel so like quick. I don't know, so I would suggest you play it. leave it a while and then come back to do the other endings because that worked out better for me. Characters I'd give 3.5 out of 5. The reason being that I liked Lucien and Tyril. I didn't mind Crius so much, and Zenn. So it was like there were two characters I really liked, even though Lucien, bless him. But yeah, so it's not like I was, you know, in love with all of them, but I loved, you know, two of them, and then the other two were decent. So that's why it's like a 3.5. Music, 5 out of 5, no questions. It was great. Art, 3 out of 5 because it wasn't like I really liked the art or really didn't like the art. It was good. The quality's high. I was happy with it, but I wasn't like, oh my god, this is so beautiful, if you know what I mean. So that's why it gets 3 out of 5. The amount of romance I'd say is about 40%. Of course, the ending CGs, you know, you get a kiss scene or whatever, and it's, you know, the romance is there, but it is very much focused on the plot, and it's understandable, to be honest. You've got Anastasia being suspected of a witch. Why would she have time for romance? You know, it's quite sad. Like, even the good endings, in a way, were tragic, so, I don't know. I think it was very a plot heavy game as opposed to a romance heavy one. And yeah, I think that kind of ends my little presentation. And I'm back. But yeah, if anyone has any questions, also did the game crash for anyone else? So it crashed a lot when I first played it, but then I think they did a patch because when I was going through it again for hours and hours, it didn't crash anymore. So I feel like they fixed that. At the beginning, though, it was crashing like crazy. I'd rather play a game plot romance over a game where the romance is badly done. Oh, yeah. Yeah, Love and Pretend, there was one infamous character, I won't mention who did a bit of a... It got so dramatic and unnecessarily dramatic, in my opinion. Time to break my wallet. Fancy said it was on sale at the moment, even of Tempest. And for those watching this VOD, I mean, like, right now when this video went live. And then published, I guess. But no, it definitely was one of those games where it wasn't perfect, don't get me wrong. Like, it wasn't perfection, but I liked it so much that those imperfections didn't matter. Like, that's kind of like my thoughts when I think of this game. I guess, yeah, 40% might be a bit generous in hindsight. Maybe it's like more like 30 or 35. I think the reason why it's a little higher is because I think of Buster Fellows as like 20%, where side A has very little romance, and then you've got side B that has some romance. This, at least there was some sprinkled throughout, and you did at least get a kiss CG for every single character, and the love some of the characters have for Anastasia is so deep. Like, oh, some of them I'm like, oh, you're so cute. What Western Otome VNs have you enjoyed, if any? Western Otome, is in like indie ones that are in English only. So I actually really enjoyed I haven't finished it, but Ambition, a Minuet in Power, which is like during the French Revolution period, and it's all about scheming, and I thought that was quite interesting. I've only played a little bit, but Our Life, I think, was quite good. It's not my cup of tea in that there are too many questions and it feels like a personality test, and I really struggle answering personality test questions because I get really confused, like, oh my god, is this Japanese side answering these questions, or is it English side me answering these questions, and it gets all muddled up and like my identity crisis goes crazy. But I'd really recommend Our Life to people. I did go through like loads of indie games during indie, like the Otome Jam event, but I never finished any of them. I just kind of tried them all out. But if there are some that you really recommend, then I'll need to have a look. But yeah, the problem is, of course, I end up playing the ones that have really recently come out. to then make a Let's Play because I've been sent the code and then I really have, like, I really should, that's the thing. However, I am going to be streaming Bell Automata in the future. I've been streaming Everyday Love. That was surprising. I didn't expect that to be so spicy. My god. Is Anastasia a good protagonist, do you think? 100% yes. If you like it, okay, it depends though. If you like the really stereotypical housewife type characters like Ichika from Column Malice, then maybe Anastasia is a bit too brave and manly. But I liked Anastasia because she was really strong. She had a strong core. Yes, she got upset about things naturally and she had a sensitive side, but even so, she was very powerful and I really liked her. She was really confident. Fan this voltage quick. I know, right? I want the fan this for even if Tempest so bad. Like at the end they just tried to tie up all the loose ends in the plot all at once. Yeah, maybe. That's the thing. I think because I focused on each route so much, I didn't really think too much about like how it ended or whatever. I think I'm not very fussy when it comes to, you know, details because I'm just enjoying the moment as opposed to like questioning, oh, but what about this? What about that? My favorite Otome. Oh, thank you, Cassie. I thought this looked a little bit like... So my mum actually made this dress. I'm going to stand up the shirt off. I think it's quite good, you know? Like, I'm surprised. She literally made it. Hi, Kyla. Welcome. But thank you. Yeah. I was gonna wear it without this, but then it would be like a bit too much like emphasis on my boobs, and I find that really uncomfortable. So I'm like, no, I'm gonna hide everything, like I always do. I don't know. I'm just not very good with cleavage and things like that. It makes me self-conscious. I think the MC's character design seems to scream strong character. It does, right? I mean, she's wearing man clothes basically in every single route. Yeah, it's funny because the one thing that frustrates me is that this bit, so in Japan, when you wear kimono, the correct way is for this side to be underneath like this. But this, because I guess it's a dress design, it's not supposed to be kimono-like. It's like, so in Japan, if you have it like this, it's on a dead person. So I wanted this bit to be underneath. I don't know if I'm making sense, but yeah, it does look a bit Japanese-esque, doesn't it? The romance in Even If Tempest feel now. Yeah, it does. I think each of the characters suit Anastasia quite well, and it's not like all of a sudden they're in love for God knows why. Because some games it's like, wait, when did you guys fall in love? But I so quite yeah, quite too. Yeah, I think the one, if I had to pick one that didn't feel natural, like it still felt natural, but if I had to pick one that feels very like what, maybe Zenn. But even then, I only think that because of a plot reason and his personality. It's not really like because it is. This is me like kind of thinking really hard and trying to find one that may feel. No, they all felt really natural, I would say. The pacing issues were more in that because things are happening so quickly, I felt like I think they just needed to spend like have more time per route because yeah, everything felt like it happened so quickly, like the plot, not even the romance. Thank you, Mora. Can't do cleavage either, that just makes me feel weird. Right? I feel really like uncomfortable. I'm like, no. What did you think about the investigation trial parts of the game? So I really liked it. I really liked the investigation and trial, especially like watching them all blame each other and seeing like finding out who actually did the murder, that sort of thing, and finding like why they did certain murders. Like one route I was like, oh my god, that's so bad. Like, so in that sense it was good. In some respects it was a little bit frustrating in that I did feel like the game was trying to get me to pick certain answers and I didn't feel like I had as much freedom as I would have liked. I'm not gonna lie, I follow walkthroughs with this game throughout. There were more consequences and retries that made me frustrated as I'm not a very patient person. That's the thing. If you're like Cassie and you're not very patient, I mean, even my patience was tested, to be honest. There was so much trial and error. I would recommend following a walkthrough, to be honest. I ended up following a walkthrough, I think, from the third route because I was like, oh, this is taking too much time. Yeah, yeah, that's another way of doing it. Like picking an option and then seeing if you got it right because yeah, it would just take one wrong option. You're like, oh, I've died again. Danganronpa. So Danganronpa, I've played the first one, I played the second one, but I haven't played the third one. I'm not sure because I enjoyed the first one. I enjoyed the second one, just not as much as the first one. I'm not sure if I'll enjoy the third one. Like, if I'm enjoying it less than the second one, I'm not sure whether I want to spend like hours and hours playing it because that game is really long. But yeah, no. I mean, if people came up to me and was like, "Oh, it's on sale, should I buy it?" I'd be like, "Yes." But then again, as is always the case, like it's one of those things where it's such personal preference. Like I know in my review I've said how much I love it, but I'm sure there are people out there who are like, "Ugh, I hated it." Because of try since it was great ideas, but if it was polished more, I think it would have been better. That's the thing. It was very much, it's not perfect. There were lots of things that I feel like they could have improved on, but I really enjoyed it anyway. It just isn't perfect. There are imperfections. It's not like a super solid game, but I really liked it. The third one is good. I actually playing the third one. It's just hard for me to get into kind of because it's so different. It's different from the other two. The third is the best. Ooh, okay. Because when I read reviews at the time, I think people were saying they preferred the first one the most. So I'm not sure about high quality, but this is Voltage's first Switch only game. So I mean, if any of you right now who's watching this knows of another Voltage game that has is of a similar quality, like has voice acting, has a particular scenario writer, whatever, then of course do let me know. But as far as I know, this is the only one that they did Switch only. And naturally, Switch games sort of able to do a lot more with than mobile, which is such a small device. So it's the scratch I never knew I had. I prefer more romantic Otomes, but was brilliantly surprised. Yeah, yeah, I think that's another way of putting it. It's weird because it isn't perfect. There are like issues here and there where they could have improved on it, but because they're so small, and like let's say those issues are cons and the pros are like all the things I enjoy, the pros just outweigh the cons so much more. Are there other Voltage games with voice acting? I'm not sure. Let me quickly Google it. I'm not sure. Just because I'm curious too. Voltage Otome voiced. Keeps on coming up with even a Tempest. All I keep on seeing is top 10 best Voltage games. But isn't there things like Ayakashi, Romance Reborn or whatever, or the Shinsengumi one? Is that not Voltage? Maybe I'm like misunderstanding things. Oh my god, what's going on? Let's delete that. But yeah, unfortunately, I can't really fully answer that question, Whittaker. But as far as I'm aware, this is the only one that was made for Switch only, as opposed to, I think I didn't read it, but I think the top ones are things like was it Star Kissed Myth, the one with all the constellations, I think another one that's popular is Kings of Paradise. I love that game. That is so good. Kings of Paradise is like up there. I think quite a few people like Kissed by the Baddest Bidder if they like trash love interests. I can see by voltage before, but I think there was only a bit of voicing. Okay. It was an app originally. Okay, interesting. I can see you sound. And also, Starcross Myth has like what is it like? They have a set of 6 constellations, another 6, I think. And isn't it like good ones and bad ones or something? I can't remember, but I've heard so many good things about that one. So I'll probably, I have got one of them. I've just kind of been saving it for those moments when I get Otome burnout, which is quite frequent for me. I kind of like every now and then I've been playing Otome games too much, and then I feel sort of, yeah, I feel burnt out basically. Very burnt out. Fortunately, I don't feel so bad now. I think what happened is I felt so like stressed, like I need to make reviews and all this because, you know, the review channels popping out left, right, and center, and I felt kind of almost like, I don't know, I almost felt like I'm just being replaced by everyone. That's how I felt. And which is another reason why I did this, like I started doing these live ones, because then I can actually interact with you, and it's, I know this sounds really selfish, but it's beneficial for me because it's a two-way thing as opposed to me just talking at a camera. And also it feels different. So I don't feel compared anymore. What I played was My Sweet Bodyguard. Ooh, I haven't actually heard of that one. I need to get onto, yes, Kings of Paradise is really good, Cassie, honestly. It's my favorite Voltage one, I think. What is this doing? Okay. But anyway, I think that kind of ends my review, I guess, because yeah, I think we've all kind of gone through things. Obviously, if you want to ask a question, then obviously comment it below. If you're watching the VOD, I'm gonna at least try and answer, and if I don't answer, someone else will typically, judging like based on my previous videos, so. But yeah, so thank you very much for watching. Remember to like and subscribe if you enjoyed the content. And what's the question of the day again? Oh yeah, do you prefer angsty Otome games or happy Otome games? Comment below and I look forward to your answers. But anyway, again, thank you very much for watching. Remember to like and subscribe if you enjoyed the content. And hopefully I will see you in another one of my videos or streams. Bye!